Listen Fast, Listen First delivers real-time, authentic stories told by successful Connecticut business owners and community leaders. You'll hear pivotal moments of risk-taking, failure, adaptability, and resilience that all lead to success. And now, the host of Listen Fast, Listen First, Alex Horton.
Our guest today is Vince Santilli, CEO of Homes for the Brave, which is a Connecticut nonprofit providing housing, vocational training, and life coaching to help veterans and non-vets transition out of homelessness. Since 2002, they've helped over 1,200 men and women return to meaningful, productive lives. On any given night, 40,000 U.S. veterans find themselves homeless, and another 1.4 million are at risk due to a lack of affordable housing and financial resources. In addition to his nonprofit leadership, Vince is actively engaged in Connecticut sports as an assistant coach at the University of Bridgeport women's basketball team, Special Olympics soccer coach, and an avid racquetball player. Welcome to the program, Vince.
Thank you so much, Alex. We're just grateful to be here with you and appreciate you featuring Homes for the Brave.
Well, I am glad you're here. The whole team is glad that you're here. And but take me back a few years. You weren't always in the nonprofit space. What were you doing before, and what was that transition like?
Well, I had a 30-plus year career at People's United Bank, and I started in the retail banking in the branch system, and then kind of rose up through the ranks. And in my last 4 years, I had 4 different roles, one of which was being executive director of the People's United Community Foundation. And I also had responsibility for the in-store network of branches in a relationship with the Stop and Shop company, which we're seeing a lot about in the news these days. And just had an amazing career there, worked with some people that will always be wonderful friends, and was just inspired by remarkable leadership at People's United Bank over the years.
And so take me through making the decision to leave the bank and really go into nonprofit, where it's all about the people and stretching a dollar and some of the challenges that go along with running a nonprofit.
Well, in some respects, it kind of flowed nicely for me. The 4 years of running People's United Community Foundation prepared me in many respects for coming into becoming a nonprofit leader. The foundation itself was a nonprofit entity, although certainly it was quite different because here I was, giving out those big checks, and now I'm hopefully receiving them. And I think that was, quite different. During my transition, I actually was the director of the U.S. office of Hands Together, an organization that serves the poorest of the poor of Haiti. And so I spent, several months up in Chicopee, Massachusetts, and certainly have visited Haiti as well. And my college priest, Father Tom Hagen, who's been a huge influence on every element of my life, really runs that organization. He's been in Haiti full-time since 1997. Oh. And so the things I learned up there in Chicopee, when I got into seat here at Homes for the Brave, I was able to immediately implement. And the other thing about that is, when you look at the nonprofit world versus the for-profit world, there's really many similarities, budgeting and the financial elements. It's just quite different in I think, the day-to-day.
Right. So what would be the biggest difference in terms of staff and managing and leading a staff at Homes for the Brave versus maybe a corporate position?
Well, at Homes for the Brave, we have our staff totals 27, and many of our staff members are alums of our program. So our male and female transitional houses are 24/7, 365, and therefore they have house monitors. We have a 7 to 3, a 3 to 11, and 11 to 7 overnight house monitor. at the men's house in particular, every single one of those house monitors is an alum of our program. And I proudly state that. And I think these are men, and they can identify with the residents that are with us now. They've been through that program. They've successfully graduated. They're now living on their own in Bridgeport or their surrounding area, most of them in Bridgeport. And they can then say to a gentleman who might be struggling a little bit and say, hey, look, buddy, here's what I did, and here's what worked for me, and this can work for you as well. And so I think they become role models, and they provide hope for the men that are now sometimes struggling a little bit. It might be PTSD. It might be overcoming an addiction. Roughly 20% of our men are coming to us out of the prison system. So you're talking about now trying to reintegrate back into the community.
And notice one of the commonalities that a lot of the nonprofits, the successful nonprofits that are holding their own have in place is that they all have some type of organic situation where the residents or the clients are part of the program. It's part of the healing process, but then there's an afterlife, there's a job life, and that certainly sounds like Homes for the Brave has that down.
Yes, indeed. And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say I always had personally a passion for serving veterans. My dad was a decorated veteran of World War II. In fact, he died quite young when I was still a teenager, and never even talked about his military service. So these are things we found out after the fact of all the things he did. And it turned out his death was ruled service connected, which we were very confused by because it was 34 years after he left the service. And so for that, 28 years ago, I started a veterans visit to the VA hospital in West Haven through my involvement with the Knights of Columbus. And that then led me back in 2002, when Homes for the Brave opened. We would be the Sunday before Christmas every year, 28 years in a row. We would then be going room to room at the Veterans Hospital. This was the first year we couldn't do that. And then Homes for the Brave in 2002 became my second stop. So ironically, I didn't come here as a CEO until 2016, but I have been in this house every year the Sunday before Christmas since it opened in 2002, and then the female house in 2011, which is the first and only home in the state of Connecticut exclusively for female veterans and their young children. It's in the west end of Bridgeport, has 14 beds, and it'll knock your eyes out.
So it's got 14 beds. How full is the women's facility?
Well, only because of COVID right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have to keep certain rooms for isolation and other things. So we are at very minimal levels right now. Prior to the pandemic hitting, 13 of those 14 beds were full just over a year ago.
And you find that with women, is it more often that women bring children with them, or men, or what do you find in that?
Well, our male house is just for the single residents only, so they're not able to have children with them. But the female house, again, it's the only one in the state of Connecticut, exclusively for female veterans and their young children. We have a young lady with a 6-year-old little boy now that's there, and it is beautiful, safe, and clean. If you were, I was there the day the house opened in 2011 through my role at People's United, and I was just blown away. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, hardwood floors, and so to think that women went from, going from homelessness or perhaps living in a vehicle in the dead of winter with a young child to this, safe, clean, getting them back on their feet. And so we are just so proud of that facility.
I find it amazing that, and I mean, obviously we're in a great country and there's so many good things that are going on. If we focus on the negative, we'll find it, but there are a lot of good things going on. But I always find it amazing that here's a woman who sacrificed for her country, and she finds herself, however that came to be, she finds herself in a homeless situation. She's got a 6-year-old, and she's an inch away from literally being, living on the streets. And And so I give you a lot of credit, and just remember that no matter how hard things ever get, that you are doing an amazing job for these people.
I appreciate that, Alex. And, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking in many respects, and it's embarrassing, I think, as a country. And I probably shouldn't say this, but to think that many of these young ladies, they entered the military seeking, hopefully, to advance their career, to serve their country, to learn a skill, learn a trade. And in many cases, what has happened, they've encountered, you know, abuse, military sexual trauma, things that are just, in my opinion, shameful and disgraceful. And now we're trying to help them pick the pieces back up, and it's not always that easy.
Do you find that how do a lot of the vets come to you? Is it mental illness? Is it addiction? Is it none of those things?
Well, roughly 72% of the men and women that we are serving are duly diagnosed. So sometimes it's mental illness, sometimes there's addictions involved, and sometimes it's just struggling to reintegrate back into society. And it's not as if they just took the uniform off. Many times, they served in the military. It might have been 15, 20, 30 years ago even. And then they had a life and, they were going along, but never really fully comfortable perhaps in that life. And maybe a lot of things could precipitate them coming to us. It could be, an addiction. It could be they lost their job. It could be their marriage or their relationship broke up, and now they just find themselves off the rails. And then, of course, we have, a portion typically of our men. It's very rare that our females come to us from the prison system, but we do have some from time to time. But in the male house, it's roughly 20% of our male veterans are coming to us directly from incarceration. And so, there's a number of challenges to reintegrate from that scenario, obviously.
So when they find their way to you, talk to me about Homes for the Brave and some of the programs that you have there that help them get back on their feet.
Well, we have 3 programs that I should probably tell you about. And we have a vocational program, so it helps our men and women find employment opportunities. It's run by a gentleman by the name of Ed Bellows. He's a certified career coach, and he's like a dog on a pant leg to find opportunities for these men and women. And he's just done remarkable. Last year, 86% of our eligible veterans were placed in employment positions, which is towards the top. We never saw the final numbers that the VA released, but we may have led the entire nation in that respect. And that is, and what he does though, within the first 24, at most 48 hours that they move in with us, he'll then meet with them and find out, what are your goals? What are you thinking? What have you never had a chance to do that you always wanted to do? And, a couple years back, we had a gentleman move in with us, 53 years old, an Air Force veteran. And he said, well, you know what? I always wanted to be an EMT. Oh, he said, for real? Yes. Oh, even now, yes. So we got him the training. He then did his diligence and he made it through. And then he became an EMT. And then they took and looked at his Air Force background, and he's now a medevac pilot.
Oh, wow.
So he'll fly those helicopters. So he is now going from a scenario where he was homeless himself, and now he's out there saving lives. And we have numerous success stories similar to that. And, I couldn't be more prouder. I mean, when you think about when you're driving into work in the morning and say, okay, we're going to make magic like this happen, I think that's really, it propels you. It really, really does.
And that's a real life story, and I think it's hard for a lot of people to relate to what it is to be homeless. And, you hear about the stats, or maybe you feed people at a homeless shelter or a food pantry or something like that. But what is it like for somebody to be homeless?
I am I guess blessed to tell you that I personally don't know, and yet I see our men and women, and so many of them are so accomplished in many respects. They have degrees, they're educated, and sometimes just things happened in their lives, and all of a sudden, and put them in these scenarios whereby they're having difficulty climbing out.
Right. It's an unimaginable situation, and it's great that your organization is there to help them and get them back on their feet. A lot of people who listen to this program are in the nonprofit space, and you having experience in the nonprofit world, what would be, if somebody wanted to get into a nonprofit leadership role, what would be one or two pieces of advice that you might give them?
Wow. Well, I just think, be open-minded. I think even if you're coming from, the corporate world, I think so many things are, yes, different, but there's other things that I think you have to follow similar disciplines and routines. But you're understanding that, of course, I went from working my tail off, working 7 days a week to generate an extra couple pennies maybe for the shareholders next quarter. And now I don't need really to remind myself that much. From the moment I walk in the door, I can look around and see, okay, I'm now working to help get these male and female, almost all of whom are veterans, get them back on their feet. And so I think that, for someone who's in the corporate world and has some great skills, I think now it's a matter of finding out, okay, what's your passion? Is your passion, animals and maybe doing something in that realm in the nonprofit world? Is your passion veterans like mine was? Is your passion youth and maybe coaching and developing and growing the academic skills of our, and maybe those are the types of organizations they should probably gravitate to.
Right. So tell me a bit about what's coming up for Homes for the Brave. You have a great website. You've got really good social media presence. I see the Step Up program. I see that you got golf tournament. You've got all sorts of great things going on. Talk to me.
Well, we do. And the other thing I should, that I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you, I spoke about our vocational program, but in 2019, we started a clinical program. So typically our male and female veterans to get mental health treatment, again, many of them are struggling with PTSD. Many are struggling with overcoming addictions, which is not easy. They want to, but it's so hard. Right. And then in this last year or so since the pandemic, social isolation has been extraordinarily difficult on everybody, not just people that already had issues that they were dealing with, but people who were just cruising right along. And so in 2019, we started a clinical program. We hired a wonderful young lady, Dr. Stephanie Lynham, and so she provides mental health treatment right in our house. So our veterans don't have to go to the VA Medical Center in West Haven or Newington. She could see them right here. And she's remarkably effective. And so we are blessed. I can't even imagine Homes for the Brave before the clinical program. It was a leap of faith. It has, certainly it's not inexpensive necessarily to run the program, but it's so germane, it's so relevant to what we do. So because of that, we then have to be more and more creative in generating revenues to keep the wheels turning, as I like to say. And so we have so many things coming up, and we have typically each quarter of the year, we have a major event. And all those major events were kind of in-person events, and we've had to shift a little bit since the pandemic for sure. But every year, the first quarter of the year was a comedy night. And it wasn't just a regular, comedy show, but these were professional comics that were U.S. military veterans, which, and so Treehouse Comedy Productions did a wonderful job working with us on that. And so last March 6th, we just got under the wire before the world kind of shut down. We had 323 attendees at Visano's Four Seasons, and it was just an awesome show. This year, we've now moved that show back to June 4th. So that's coming up.
That's a Friday, June 4th.
That
right?
is a Friday night.
Yep.
And it will be at Visano's Four Seasons, and we will have other ways that you'll be able to see that show if you're not comfortable with being in a crowd in person at that particular point in time.
Have you started selling tickets yet, Vince?
We have started selling tickets, and we've already got a pretty significant number already committed. But, we can still sell some more. And then there's going to be other ways to access the show. So stay tuned for that. And then just before that, though, we will be having our 17th annual Golf Classic. And not really sure what to expect this year. It's on May 24th at Rolling Hills Country Club in Wilton. We weren't sure what to expect. If you ever saw the response we've already received, it's just remarkable. It's encouraging. And so we are now focusing more on generating auction items for the folks that are there. And it's all going to be outside, including the end of tournament, meal and so forth. And so we're generating auction items and sponsorships, and it is going to be a big day for Homes to the Brave.
I will donate one to you right now. I've got a signed Joe Namath jersey sitting in my house right now that needs a home. So I'll absolutely bring that over to you.
That is awesome. We love Joe Namath, and my wife shares that May 31st birthday with Joe, and which is a badge of honor in my house.
Great.
And then you mentioned the Step Up, which it was always called the Step Up for the Brave. And so last year, when we knew we couldn't have several hundred people at the arena at Harbor Yard, the Webster Bank Arena, running up and down stairs, we said, okay, we're going to have to shift a little bit. And so we did it where it's as many steps as you can take over a 9-day period. And you can do that on the beach where you're vacationing. You could do that on your high school track. You could do it in your own neighborhood. You can do it up and down, from your bedroom to your bathroom. And, that could be the steps. And this is something that this event, last year was the 6th year. It's taken a quantum leap each year. It started out the very first year with 86 participants, generated about $16,000. And last year we had 630 participants in 17 states, and it generated $109,000. And this year, we're about to finalize the date. We're looking at, obviously, a 9-day period in August. And we're going to really make the kickoff a party atmosphere. And then it's going to be, you can do your steps anywhere you want, where you enjoy running or walking. And you can run, walk, crawl, do it any way you want. And we're hoping for 1,000 participants this year, and I think we've got a very good shot at doing it.
I hope being on the show can help you get there. I'll tell you a quick funny story about that Step Up for the Brave. You gave me a T-shirt several years back, and I wear it when I'm taking walks or what have you. And there was one day I was out and we were walking with my wife, and several people kind of came over and saluted me. I don't have a military background, but just wearing that shirt just kind of changed people's perception of me and so forth. So I really appreciate that. That was just kind of an honor. But what a great organization, great events coming up. What else? How else can people help you? You obviously are trying to fundraise but if somebody was out there listening to this and they really could make an impact, maybe a significant impact, well, how can they help?
Well, hopefully you have a lot of business owners in your listening audience, and so they can look at that and say, wow, I'd love to hire a veteran and maybe help somebody get back on their feet. And that's, we're continually in need of employment opportunities for our male and female veterans. And of course, we gauge when they're ready to go and so forth. But it's hard for them to then move out and get their own apartment if they don't have a regular income. So that's and a big piece of what we do. We have pre-employment workshops. We do interview prep, resume writing, etc. And so sometimes, and it's been so hard to do since the pandemic, but we'll be, hopefully in the next few weeks, reopening the house and having our regular programming, because we have a walk-in drop-in veteran service center that has job prep workshops, that has computer classes, therapy dog visits, AA meetings, all movie showings. All of these are going on every single week, and we're just chomping at the bit to get to where we can kind of throw those doors open and do these things for veterans in the area, not just our residents. And so that's, I think, a big piece. And, and we have life skills workshops on Thursday afternoons. And before the pandemic, 3-4 years ago, we were just trying to, kind of get it rolling. And so it's like noon on a Thursday, and we'd say, what are we going to talk about this week? We got to the point last March of 2020 where that was booked for 3 months out, and you'd see somebody coming in, lending their expertise. It would rotate between financial wellness, nutrition, fitness, fitness instruction and workshops, and then, life skills. And it was just things that, was so helpful for our veterans. And you'd see a man or woman come in and give a workshop, and the next time you saw them, you'd be turning on one of the local TV stations, and they're giving financial expertise to their listening audience. And so we are just so proud of that. And so we're just ready to flip the switch and get that rolling again.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Well, I really appreciate your time today. But before we end this, we're going to roll into Connecticut rapid fire questions. And the whole point of this, Vince, is to support our local community, have a little fun doing so. All right, you ready?
I think so.
Well, believe me, it's not a trick question here or anything like that. But what's your favorite pizza in Connecticut?
Oh my goodness, my favorite. Well, I mean, Vazzi's and Johnny Vaz is is a wonderful supporter and is on our board, and also Jenna's Brick Oven in Bridgeport, Madison Avenue, Bridgeport is wonderful to us. So
Vazzi's, a shout out to Vazzi's, and a shout out to Jenna's.
Yes, indeed.
Good stuff. Yeah, we have so many great pizza places. It's almost impossible, to pick one. But good stuff. All right. Now, are you a coffee guy, a deli guy? What's your go-to coffee place?
Well, I don't. I've had my last cup of coffee in my senior year of college, which wasn't just a couple of years ago.
All right, so we've got to shift gears, and you got to.
I'm sorry.
What's your thing? Through COVID too, and I remember this. There was a deli in my town that would just. They stayed open. They struggled through it, and I felt like I got to get there. I've got to shop there. But was there a place in your town that just kind of you got out there and supported them?
Well, my staff enjoys, and a lot of times, again, we had to go from being able to go out, leave the building for lunch, and we had months and months where we just had to stay in the house. And so, Fruta in Bridgeport is something that I know the staff has enjoyed, the sandwiches and the salads and so forth. So I should, I guess, mention that. It's quite convenient to us and for us.
It's called Fruta?
It's called Fruta.
Okay.
And then, Arthur's Famous is just steps away. And so, those are, I think, local restaurants that have, struggled but maintained and stayed open. And I know it's so tough for our restaurant owners.
Yeah, that's why we're giving them the shout outs. It's so important that they hang in there somehow. And the way they're going to hang in there is that we go out and support them.
Yes.
All right, final question. I know, obviously you run a nonprofit, but coming into the nonprofit, what nonprofit would you like to give a shout out other than Homes for the Brave?
Wow. There are if you draw a circle around Homes to the Brave, and so without going too far, just in that little neighborhood in Bridgeport, you can draw a circle and see some spectacular nonprofits. In addition to us, the Center for Family Justice, we have a partnership with them. And again, many of our women have, faced abusive backgrounds, so they'll work with them. The Cardinal Sheehan Center, we've had a fitness partnership where our residents could go and get a workout. And so we're just waiting to effectuate some of those things again. And just right next door to us is the Mercy Learning Center, and they teach, immigrant women how to, and Jane Ferreira and her, they just are absolutely remarkable. And I could probably take up several hours talking about several more.
Well, I think it's important for people to know that the nonprofits, there's a community here, and nonprofits rely on other nonprofits. And I'm very familiar with the organizations you referenced, Mercy Learning. And these are great places that if you're ever in need of any of those programs, we have just a ton of great nonprofits in this state.
Without a doubt. And, Homes for the Brave, I knew, as I mentioned, as a volunteer being in the house every year, they were also one of my grantees when I was the executive director of People's United Community Foundation, and I'm pleased to say they're continuing to support us as I would have hoped. And, I got a pretty good feel for sitting on the other side of the table and seeing the just remarkable work that's being done by so many nonprofits in this. And if it wasn't for these nonprofits, I don't really know how many of our individuals and families that are struggling, how our children could even survive right now.
Right. Agreed. Well, I thank you so much for coming in, Vince. It's a real pleasure. And we're rooting for Homes for the Brave. We're rooting for you. And I hope that 2021 is a great year for you. Thank you so much for coming in.
We couldn't be more appreciative. We couldn't be more grateful, Alex. Thanks so much for, giving us this opportunity.
You bet. And I also want to thank our sponsors, Infinite Web Designs, Papa's Commercial Photography, and BRBG Insurance. We couldn't do it without any of you. And if you like what you're hearing, please go to YouTube or one of the podcast channels, subscribe, like, share, do all those things. We appreciate it. And have a great day. Thank you.